My name is Mark Lynch. I am the chair of the Bylaws Advisory Committee. It's January 5th, 2022 at 6:05 p.m. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is the roll call. Amy Cates.
Here. Oh. Amy Sear.
Carol Zace.
Present.
Rick Pisano.
Present.
Scott Horsley. Not hearing anything. Scott is evidently not with us. Next on our agenda is public comment. We will shortly get to the actual bylaw review. There are some proposals for changes. Yes, Amy. Yes, I've just got a request to speak up, and I will endeavor to do so. Are there any public comments? Okay, then we'll just proceed to the meat of the meeting. There are substantive and what I will call typographical changes proposed for the bylaws. There's still, last year we did a good job, or they did a good job of finding some typos and whatnot, which were corrected. To the extent that anyone on the committee finds more, please, you can send them directly to me, and if they're literally typos and non-controversial, we'll get that done. But I understand that there are also substantive proposals for bylaw changes. And I think Ms. Zace had a couple of those, and I'm not sure if anyone else did. But I will recognize Ms. Zace.
Okay, we're going right into that. First off, how many meetings will we be having? Is this a one and only, or will there be more meetings?
The bylaws require that we have at least one meeting per year. So I think it will depend upon the substance of the meeting, how it goes, whether we come to agreement. So TBD.
Okay. One question I had, and this is my first time being on this committee, was reviewing the bylaws. Although I did attend as a viewer one of last year's meeting, or the last year's meeting, is trying to understand where the updates are that are noted on the let me get to the cover page of the bylaws, the amendments that are listed on page 1, as to where they align with the bylaws themselves. Has there ever been any discussion about trying to align those like they do at the bottom with when it says things from the state that we added in, that we acts of the legislature that were adopted?
If I'm understanding you correctly, the goal is, and we've been working on this, Lisa and Charlie have been working on incorporating the changes that were approved at the annual meeting back in May into the bylaws that appear on the website. Lisa, am I saying that accurately?
Any article that was changed has an updated date on it. Adopted on in bold.
Okay, and that appears on the website?
On the version on the website, yes.
Okay. I see Rick has his hand raised.
I was not able to hear
You're
Lisa's
muted,
answer.
Rick.
You can't.
Rick is, you're muted.
Yes.
No.
I show
When I
as
have called
unmuted.
into fire commissioner meetings,
Hang-
like
hang-
Rick
hang
is
on.
doing,
Hang on a second.
you're
Rick,
not allowed to talk. You only can chat, use the chat box. So I don't know if that we're running into that same problem here tonight or not. Just a piece of information.
Lisa, shouldn't Rick be able to speak if he unmutes?
Please say again, I couldn't hear you. Mark,
wasn't-
what are you asking me?
I'm asking if Rick can unmute himself so we can hear him.
Rick is not in it. Oh,
I can see him.
I can see him. I can see him talking. We can't.
he is unmuted. Hold on.
Okay, we're having a technical difficulty. Hang on, Rick.
How's that?
I was asking what Lisa's response was because
Try again.
I had been unable to hear Lisa's response to your question, Carol, and I was asking for her to repeat it.
Rick? Rick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
At the bottom of each amendment, there is a date that says approved date, I believe. So that's how you would determine which things were added on what date.
Good. Thank you very much.
Lisa, I have the current bylaws that are on the fire district website, and I do not see that. Those notes. Page 16 is just in relation to acts of the legislature adopted by the Katuitt Fire District. It does not correlate to what's listed on page 1.
Okay, so you're going to have to ask.
Page 1 says the amended, the little asterisk says amended, which is different than the adopted because the dates do not match.
You will have to ask Charlie about protocol, the clerk.
So Lisa's response was, I need to ask Charlie, the town clerk, about this information, which again, it's not in there. So it's something that I'm very interested in trying to do, either going forward with amendments or maybe going back a few years and trying to update the bylaws with some sort of understanding of what was done, what changes were done.
I think that makes perfect sense. Let me talk directly to Charlie. I had asked him to update from last year. Between Charlie and Lisa and I, we will endeavor to get the correct, up-to-date bylaws in the public website.
Well, the corrected, it is, the amended is through May 26, 2021. So it has been amended, but I don't know where is what I'm saying. What was amended? Is there a record somewhere else of the amendments, or is there a way for us to identify that in the bylaws itself?
I think where you've, I didn't understand you previously. And I'm happy to hear that the May 21, 20 are in there. I think that the place where you find them is in the minutes of that meeting. I don't think they're anywhere else. We're relying on Charlie to accurately transcribe those changes as adopted at the meeting and put them into the bylaws. So to the extent you want to match that up and kind of proofread it, you can.
Yeah, no, I don't want to match and proofread it, but if you look at the bylaws as they are currently posted on our website, at the bottom, you have the listing of any of the adopted by the fire district from the state acts of the legislature. I'm just saying, can we do something like that for our own amendments coming from the Katuitt Fire District annual meetings?
Rick Pisano has held up.
The annual reports,
We can't hear him again. Lisa, can you do something so we can hear Rick?
Go ahead.
I was trying to say that if what you're looking for, if I understand your question, is what was modified to the current form, you can find that in the annual reports for each meeting where they were adopted. It will show you what the previous language was and what the modification was, the recommended modification that was accepted. But that's the only historical record I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to bring everything together in one place, but I guess that's not going to happen, or hasn't happened in the past. I was hoping it was something we could do for the future.
Thank you, Rich. We appreciate that. The good news out of this discussion is that we do seem to have updated bylaws on our website. And to the extent that people want to review them historically, they should look at the annual reports for each meeting. That is each annual meeting containing those changes. Are there comments about substantive changes to the bylaws?
I
Go ahead, Carol.
don't know if it's for the bylaws, but two substantive changes I would like to propose for discussion is about term limits of commissioner boards and about rotation of the chairmanship on the commissioner boards.
So two proposals. One is for term limits and one is for rotation of chairmanship on the three boards. Let's start with term limits. I'm correct in saying that at present there are no term limits whatsoever for any of the prudential, water, or fire committees, correct? What would the proposal be?
I don't have a specific one, but I do know that in the town of Barnstable, they have term limits of 12 years. So if we wanted to copy what is done at the town level, that is one idea.
Let me ask Carol, what's the impetus or the logic, or why do you feel term limits would be important or appropriate?
I think for a variety of reasons, it is important to make sure that we rotate the leadership in the village, for one, and allows more opportunities for other citizens of the village to approach the process of becoming a commissioner without having to unseat someone, therefore increasing participation without making it a village issue.
Mark, I think Carol makes a good point. I don't know where it appears in the bylaws, you know, term limits. I was looking for it and I don't think I came upon it, but I think that it's a good point. I served from 2010. Oh, sorry. I served from 2010 to 2013 on the Prudential Committee. And during that time, I think maybe 2 out of those 3 years, I served as chairman. And I think rotating chairman is always a good idea. And I think that term limits is probably also a good idea.
Any more specifics as to why you make the proposal? Just interested in a robust discussion.
I think it goes back to when even in our country, when people began running for office, they were workers, they were farmers. They said they were going to lend their expertise for a certain period of time, and then they were going to go back to their own business and their own life. And I've always thought that that's a good model for serving the public. So 12 years matches up to town council. So I think in terms of a period of time, that's probably a pretty good period of time.
Rick, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Please, can you hear me?
If you could speak up.
Am I coming through?
Yes, but you're low.
You're
so-
only coming through to Lisa's computer, and the rest of us have to hear it from there. So that's why we ask you to speak up.
I'm trying to raise the volume on my end. I don't believe that the solution proposed addresses an existent problem. The comparison to Barnstable Town Council is, I don't think, a good comparison. We are not a full-time legislative body. These are part-time positions, and historically, over the last 2 decades that I am directly aware of, we have had way too many unopposed elections because of the difficulty of finding people willing to serve for no particular salary or benefits. When the insurance benefits were removed, when the health insurance benefits were removed from the position, there was an even more dramatic fall off in interest in serving on the committees. So I don't see a problem that needs to be addressed with this proposed solution. And I don't really follow the comparison to the town legislature, which is a very different structure and position.
Mark, is it possible to tell us what you said?
Yes, Rich, I'm going to be repeating some of what you said because not everyone heard you. And stop me if I go astray. Rich was of the position that this was dissimilar to the town of Barnstable in that these are not full-time positions. He remarked that many of these elections, or some of these elections recently, have been unopposed. I will add, from my perspective, I ran unopposed, which I thought was too bad. I'm glad I'm on the Prudential Committee. I hope to be of service. There should be some healthy competition for these places. So I think those were the 2 points Rich was making. He didn't see this as a problem that need to be solved. Is that a fair characterization, Rich?
The proposal doesn't address a problem that I'm aware of positions blocking out potential candidates. The way it works right now is that we have so much trouble finding volunteers to even consider running for positions that any ceiling on it, I think, handicaps us, doesn't help us.
Did you hear that?
He said that he doesn't think that there's enough volunteers.
Yes,
Do you perceive that as true as well?
I do. Based on my experience where I ran opposed, Rich was saying that he doesn't want anything that's going to further increase the possibility of unopposed elections.
And do you currently serve as chairman on the Prudential Committee?
I am not. We will get to the issue of chairmanships shortly. I don't.
Is Ms. Parks still chairman?
Yes.
She is.
Yeah. I see Carol has her hand up. Go ahead, Carol.
So first off, I wasn't comparing to the town of Barnstable. I was asked by Mark Lynch if I had any recommendations. I said, as a starting point, we could potentially utilize what the town of Barnstable is doing. I do not see us as similar. It was just a suggestion of what they have in place if we wanted to go that route. As for lack of opposition to positions, I think what I saw was when a position came open on the Prudential Committee that was not part of an election, but was going to be an appointment, there were 3 candidates. So part of this might be that people don't want to go up against an existing commissioner, but would gladly serve if the opportunities presented themselves to be able to be elected or appointed without having to go through a full campaign. Like Mark was saying, he didn't have any opposition because maybe everybody thought that he'd be a great candidate. But I still think that with term limits, you offer it up to more community members and encourage the change of involvement in this community. And what has been done in the past isn't necessarily what it should be done in the future in order to encourage and be inclusive to more participation. So that's my comments on that.
Right. Mark, I think Carol has a great point that if there was an opening and people could run for a seat that was vacating because of term limits, that you might find people come out and throw their hat in the ring for that position, but they might not want to go up against somebody because of the politics of doing that.
I'm going to throw another thought into the mix, which is I've not been on the Prudential Committee for long, but two things occur to me. One is that 9 positions is a lot for a very small village. And there seems to be limited coordination between the Prudential, the Fire, and the Water Commission. I don't think this is anything we could change with the bylaws, but to me, it seems like one body consisting of 7 or even 5 members that dealt with water, fire, and Prudential Committee issues might be preferable. It occurs to me, we're going to get the Katuitt School, which will cost at least $1 million to raise, to demolish, if that's what we intend to do with it. The Water District has noted several times that if PFAS becomes an issue, we might need a $10 million filtration plant kind of right now. And I know the fire commissioners, and Rich will comment on this, some of them at least are the view that a new firehouse might well be an appropriate investment. It just occurs to me that that adds up to around $23 million and seems unlikely to be funded by our little village. I could be wrong, but it seems to me that the 3 committees working more closely together might be an appropriate way to weigh these competing financial issues. So the upshot is I'm siding with Rich with the view that unopposed elections are probably not something we should be doing something to encourage. And if anything, we might want to consider consolidating, or if not consolidating, then at least establishing cross communication between our committees, which maybe a smaller number rather than a larger number would be appropriate. The only other thing I'd say, and sorry for that long-winded aside, but I'm generally not in favor of term limits. I am very conscious of the level of detail required in the Water and Fire Commission and also the Prudential Commission. There is a learning curve. As I say, I'm pretty new to this, but I'm still very much learning. So those are my views on term limits. I don't know if there are any other comments, please jump in. I see Rich shaking his head. Anyone else?
Can we talk about what you just presented on the one broader commission?
Sure, we're getting a little off your topic, but I'm happy to have a kind of a
I can wait.
freewheeling discussion.
I think that's a very interesting idea. Having been someone who's attended all 3 board meetings as a member of the Civic Association responsibility for a year or longer, it was very clear to me that there wasn't a lot of communication among all the commissioners. There might have been among the chairmen, but the three various chairmen, but that I was surprised that on each board, there wasn't a commissioner assigned to attend one of the other commissioners' meetings and report back. That, so what you observed, Mark, was that there wasn't a lot of discussions among the commissioners. So the concept of making it one of whatever mix is a very interesting one.
That'd probably be a big step in the sense that I think it would involve, the, whatever you call the acts, the enabling acts that created the fire district calls for a 3-person fire district or committee and a 3-person prudential committee. And I understand the water enactment calls for a 3-person. Perhaps an intermediate step would be to require a certain minimum number of joint meetings per year between the various committees. Any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Rich.
I'd just like to comment that in the course of our meetings, we frequently have a member of the Prudential Committee in attendance at the Fire Commissioners meeting. And I have appeared at Prudential Committee meetings 3-4 times a year, just in the course of normal business. Plus, will in these last couple of years of remote meeting often be attending via Zoom to listen in. Probably the more isolated board is the water board. Their issues are of a much more technical engineering component. And when they touch on larger district issues like the school building and preserving the watershed area, there was a lot of cross-board contact and support and exchange of ideas to make sure that we did everything necessary to secure that acreage and protect the wellhead. So although I'm always open to have more cross-committee contact, I would say that it is not that there is not already some, which tends to be issue-driven rather than broad-based.
Any other thoughts on that that proposal for joint meetings? Go ahead, Amy.
In previous years, at the beginning of some committees, there would be a request for a member of that committee that might like to frequent another committee's meetings. So someone who would say, well, I'll go to water or I'll go to fire. I'm using Prudential as an example. And I think, I always thought that was a good idea. And in previous years, I saw that work. And I don't know if recently that has worked, but it's not a bad idea. I remember that when I served, that started for me. And I went to all of the other meetings that started years of continuing to attend all of the meetings so that I knew what was happening in the town from the 3 different perspectives: water service, fire service, and the financial department. So I don't know if that's a possibility as well. It's so that the first meeting of the year with Prudential, you say, okay, who's going to serve on bylaws? Who's going to serve on policy advisory? And who would like to choose to attend fire or water?
That's certainly another way to go about it. And if we were to kind of head in that direction. It seems, it could be a best practice rather than a requirement under the bylaws. And hopefully the other committees would have the same angle of attack in the sense that each committee would appoint someone to be kind of I hate to use the term watchdog, but the contact with the other committees. All right, well, let's put a pin in that for the time being. My thought is that, so we've kind of raised two issues. We're going to raise next the issue of chairmanships. My thought is that we'll kind of discuss all these because they may in some ways be kind of related. They're different ways to attack similar problems. And then we'll vote on them at the end of the meeting, if that makes sense to people.
What about Scott?
Yeah, well, he's not here. We do have a quorum. I wish he was. I'd love to get his input as well. Go ahead, Amy.
Another question, Mark. I served on bylaws last year, and I don't have the amended bylaws in front of me. But if Carol has them, Article 1, Section 7 was it changed from must be a resident to must be a registered voter? I can't remember if that actually passed.
Article 1, Section
7.
must be a registered voter.
Must be a registered voter. So that did pass. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rich is just telling me that my mute was on. I appreciate the hand waving. I was just saying we've addressed two issues or discussed them at least. One is the possibility of term limits for 12 years. One is the possibility of required or suggested combined meetings between the various committees. And the third one that Carol had raised relates to the rotation of chairmanships on the boards. Carol had indicated to me she was interested in discussing this, so I spent some time going over the bylaws. There is nothing in the bylaws that I can find about chairmanships of committees, meaning I don't know how they exist other than we kind of run our meetings by Robert's Rule of Order, which presumably requires some kind of chair. Amy has her hand up.
I do, and I think you mentioned a term before, talking about best practices, and I think that rotation of chairmanship falls under something that could be considered best practices, so that a committee doesn't rotate the chairman and then someone else assumes that position and then lets it go at some point, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and then it goes back to the previous chairman, and then that goes on for the next 3 years.
I guess my question is, and Rich, I'm looking for you to jump in here too as well. What are the duties of so there's nothing in the bylaws about chairs. So what are the duties of a chair? And is that delineated anywhere, or is that just custom and usage?
I think, unless Rick wants to talk, I think that the chairman develops the agenda or proposes the agenda, and certainly manages the meeting. So probably Robert's rules would tell us that that's that that's what the chairman does, is the chairman runs the meeting. And probably, you don't think so, Carol? Yeah, and,
No, I don't think, you might not have heard what Mark said,
oh,
was that there's nothing in the bylaws anywhere that talks about the committees having a chairman or what a chairman would do in a committee, because there's no, that's what he was saying.
Good point.
So I'm scratching my head a little bit. Hi.
We're gonna have an AA meeting here tonight at 7. Are you gonna be here long for time?
Lisa, can you?
I think it's downstairs.
I think it's downstairs, isn't it? Hang on just a minute, everyone. We're have another group with a meeting and we're trying to get them situated. So give us 3 minutes while Lisa handles that. Okay, we've got Lisa back. So we were talking about what chairs, hang on just a minute. Rich has got his hand up. Go ahead, Rich.
Mark, I just wanted to add to this, the role that the chairman plays, at least on the fire commission, includes, as Amy pointed out, establishing the agenda and running the meeting. But it is also to maintain a high.
Rich, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you and we can't hear you at all. I'm going to go over to Lisa's desk and listen to you there and recount what you're saying. Sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, let me first just say I appreciate your tolerating my needing to meet remotely. In the future, I will be able to mask and come in, but right now I'm on nursing duty with my wife, so I can't really leave the house for an extended period. But my point was that on the fire commission, the role of the chairman also is been to maintain a high degree of coordination with the chief in the day-to-day operations of the department and dealing with staffing. That requires a fair amount of time and active coordination that falls to usually to the chair because the chair ends up being the person who has the most available time. Typically, it ends up being someone who is retired or semi-retired, which was the case when I assumed the chair. When people are working full-time, it is an additional burden that people often aren't able to take on very easily. In the past, in the district, on all boards, the chair position has been elected annually, which allows not only for rotation, but also continuity, depending on the board's assessment of which is the more valuable asset on any given situation. So although the idea of greater participation is always, I think, something to be fostered, it requires participation and real immersion in the activity of the fire department, at least, if you want to be able to do the job of chair in a, well, to do it successfully. I'll stop there.
Okay, let me repeat. First of all, Rick, thanks us for our forbearance. He is on nursing duty at home and can't leave, and so therefore he needs to be at home. And Rick, we appreciate your being here remotely. With the on the topic of the fire department chairmanship, he says that it requires a high degree of coordination with the chief regarding staffing. Is usually someone who is retired or semi-retired because it requires a real immersion into the topic and kind of the details of the day-to-day running of the fire department. So it sounds certainly a little different from the prudential chair. Fran's on, she can comment as well. I think to me, it's helpful to know what the duties of the chairs are in the various committees. Rick also pointed out, I believe this is correct, the chairs are elected annually. I know the Prudential Committee elects their chair annually, and anyone on the committee can be elected chair. Did I miss anything, Rick? He's waving his hands no. So it'd be great to have Scott here at some point to tell us what the duties of the chair are for the water department. In the Prudential Committee, it is an agenda setting. Oh, hang on. Fran's here waving her hand, so she'll weigh in on her duties. Hang on just a minute, Fran. We may need to do the same thing where I go over to Lisa's desk, but see if we can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, but Fran, hang on. I'm going to go over to Lisa's computer and kind of take notes of your comments and repeat them to the group. Because otherwise Lisa can hear you and I can sort of hear you, but no one else can. So hang on just a minute.
Okay.
Let me just, as an aside, say, in the future, we may be better off just having a remote Zoom meeting. We'll talk about that. Fran, go ahead.
Okay. Like Rick, I set the agenda and chair the meetings. I also, like Rick, except with the treasurer and the assistant treasurer, meet with them fairly regularly during the month, usually on a weekly basis. And for anything that comes up. And I also try to stay up to breast with what's going on both the fire commissioners and the water department. Excuse me. I also, unlike the water department, the Prudential Committee does not have any clerical assistance. So it's up to the chairman to do most of the clerical business that is required of the committee, with the exception now that the clerk is doing the minutes. I'm also the caretaker of Freedom Hall. So I am currently the person that's scheduling Freedom Hall, meeting with potential people who would like to rent Freedom Hall. Anything that goes wrong at Freedom Hall in terms of heating, water, lights, I'm called. And so I agree 100% with Rick. You know, it's not a job for somebody who's you know, has another full-time job. You know, it takes up a great deal of time to do the job and to do it well and be aware of all the necessary things that need to be completed to have a successful committee. Oh, God.
Okay, I just took some notes and let me pass on Fran's comments about her duties. She does set the agenda for the meetings. She chairs the meetings. She meets with the assistant treasurer and treasurer usually on a weekly basis, and stays up to date with the fire and water committees. And also the Prudential Committee does not have a clerical assistant, so she handles clerical issues. Also, the chair is the caretaker of Freedom Hall in terms of scheduling, repairs, et cetera. And she agrees with Rich that the clerk job is not a job for someone with a full-time job. Fran, did I get that mostly correct? She's giving a thumbs up. It's interesting to me that you know, this is the first time I'm hearing what the duties of the fire chair are. I knew, of course, what Fran's duties were, and I'd love to hear what the duties of the water commissioner are as well. It seems to me that it's a different issue whether the chairmanship is kind of the person who runs the meetings versus a person who has substantive duties that do not fall to the other committee members, and kind of how that is delineated is of interest to me. It seems like we'd want to know that before we can make a decision whether, well, it's Rich's point to me that the chairs get elected every year is pretty persuasive. If I guess when there's only 3 people, someone has to decide that they're unhappy with the chair. 2 people have to decide that they're unhappy with the chair. So it does seem like a position that probably sticks when it starts. I don't know, any thoughts, comments?
I think Fran's right, you know, that all of the things that she talked about that the chairman does, that sounds all very familiar to me. You know, during my tour as chairman, I scheduled Freedom Hall, I worked with the treasurer, I did the agenda, I went to the other 2 committee meetings so I would know what was happening with the other 2 committees. So, so she's right. She's right. The only mistake I made is that I had a full-time job and that I wasn't a retired person. So, do you know what I mean? So it was a full schedule, being the Prudential Committee chairman. But I think Fran's right that the Prudential Committee chairman probably does do all of those duties.
And is that kind of by custom and practice? Because I don't see it written down anywhere. Let me ask that of the Prudential Committee and the Fire Committee. Are the duties kind of custom and practice?
The degree of coordination takes a while to develop. And once it's in place, it has been an open discussion each year where a chair is elected, or if the case be re-elected, the weighing the needs with the availability. So it would fall under custom and practice, the decision making, but all the committees have been governed by Robert's Rules of Order for decades, and they all frame on the procedure of an elected chair.
Let me just repeat that if everyone didn't hear. Rich says that, yeah, the duties of the chairman are a matter of custom and practice that have developed over the years. He makes the point that it does require substantial coordination, is making the point that it requires a period of time to, in his view, to get that level of coordination with the fire chief. He made a third point that went right out of my mind. Rich, what did I forget?
That custom and practice has been all the committees run on Robert's Rules of Order, including the election process for the chair position.
And the last point is that the committees run on Robert's Rule of Order, which we've all noted. That, as I say, it seems to me that if all the chair did was run the meetings pursuant to Robert Rule of Order, this wouldn't be much of an issue one way or the other. It does appear that the chairs have much more substantial duties that have kind of evolved over time from custom and practice. And I have no thoughts as to whether that is working well or not as well as it could, or certainly the chairs have worked very, very hard. Let's see if we have other commentary.
I do. So I know the water commissioner isn't here, but I've attended a fair number of their meetings, and they do rotate as their customary practice, their chairmanship. And one of the reasons I was bringing this up was because I saw a tremendous amount of benefits in that rotation for 3 commissioners who all work full-time. I understand the water commissioners have an administrative assistant, but they still set the agenda, they still follow through on all the work and do, similar, very much of what, but what the point is, not the workload, that's not the point. The point is that what I've seen is that it's allowed the commissioners to all become comfortable with being a chairman and all that it entails that they do. And I think it has made them be a stronger board because of the level of information that they all share. And so I thought it was an interesting model to potentially move to our other commissioner boards so that we were consistent within the Katuitt Fire District. Just something that I observed in the variety of meetings and thought it would be of interest.
And let me ask, I assume that this rotation is again a matter of custom and practice among the water commissioners and is not written anywhere.
I have no answer on that. I have just seen it practiced over the last 3, maybe 4 years. I've only been in the full-time resident for 6 years, so I don't know about that before.
I'm going to address what Carol said. I've observed that with water as well. And I think that it's a part of the camaraderie that they have as water commissioners. To go back just for a minute to Prudential, because the Prudential Committee actually is the executive committee of the district and the Finance Committee, then it probably does make sense that the Prudential Committee would want to avail themselves of what's happening on the other two boards, because if it seems to me, based on my experience and observations, that the Prudential Committee probably has more to do with the overall decisions of the district than either of the other two committees that confine themselves to a certain extent with managing a department. So water is managing a department, fire is managing a department, but Prudential has, like I said, supposedly the executive responsibility of the finances of the district. And so it's always made sense. What Fran said, you know, that she tries to stay up to date with the other two committees. I think that probably inherent in our Prudential Committee is probably, that probably makes sense for Prudential Committee to operate that way. Thanks.
It is interesting to me that we all seem to be on the same page, that it's important and helpful for members of the various committees to be aware of what is happening with the other committees. I don't know that it, from my perspective, that having one person on each of the committees responsible for knowing what's happening with the other committees is necessarily the best way to do it. It would be helpful, I would think, if all members of the committees would be at least up to date on those topics that will require the cooperation of all three committees. I mean, I certainly don't feel the need to know the details of the staffing at the fire department, nor do I think I need to know you know, the latest on the specifics of the testing at the water department. But it would be beneficial, I think, if all the members of the Prudential Committee and all three committees had cross-pollination about the issues that are going to affect all three committees. My thoughts. Anybody else?
I totally agree. And having been the sole person attending all three board commissioners meetings as a representative from the Civic Association, and then reporting back to the Civic Association, it became very apparent that we would be better served if multiple people or everybody on the association took turns following the different commissioners and then reporting back, because that would build a knowledge base that was more in depth than just what I could share each month. So I think it's what you're saying. I agree very much with what you're saying, that you don't need to know the nitty gritties, but to know some of the main topics that each of the commissioner boards are dealing with is helpful to staying abreast of what's going on in the fire district as a whole.
Well, I think we've had a pretty good discussion. I think, we've got four, but I think we can vote on at least some of these issues that have been raised and see if we have a majority on any one of them.
Well, I would like to propose, since it's been such a disjointed communication flow tonight, and we are missing a water commissioner who's part of this meeting, that we do either another meeting in person if COVID presents the opportunity for us to do that, or have one additional meeting, all of us on Zoom. So I would suggest we postpone and have a second meeting.
Hang on, Rich, go ahead and just speak really loudly and we'll see if we can hear you.
I strongly second Carol's position. I believe that it is worth revisiting with the full board in attendance and either live or all on Zoom to facilitate the exchange.
I am happy to do that. It does occur to me that, we may have a majority with the people we have right here to vote on some of these issues, but I am perfectly okay with further discussion of the issue. And if the members of this committee are okay with it, I would suggest that we have a Zoom meeting, not with attendance here at Freedom Hall until we can resolve our sound issues. Thumbs up from Rick. I'm sorry, Rick. Carol, you okay with that? Thumbs up from Carol, thumbs up from Amy. Let's make sure that we can get Scott. I definitely want his input on this as well. And I will try to get something on the schedule probably for late January. Does that make sense for people?
Repeat that again.
I'll try to get something on the schedule for late January.
Late in January.
Yeah.
Rick's
And
hands up.
go ahead, Rich.
Could we position it for more mid-February? The end of the month, I have budgeting reporting to do to Prudential, and it occupies a lot of time and planning. And with the transition to a new chief, I got a lot on my plate. If this could be put out to the middle of February, it would work much better for me.
I'm fine with that. I would ask this, if this group can take a look at the bylaws, and let's make sure, well, I will ensure, I think we have ensured, but I will check again, that on the website are the most up-to-date versions of the bylaws. I encourage you to go back again and see if there are any type changes that need to be made, and have them, a list of those for our next meeting. And then we've kind of set an agenda of issues that we need to vote on, but I think we've also just opened up some general discussion about how best the committees can be run. And if you would all think about that, there may be no changes required at all. Or maybe we can agree on something that's critical. Amy,
Mark,
go ahead. Hang on.
Quick question for Carol. Let's see, it would be the last, this would be the last item in the current bylaws. So it would be section 11, and let me find out what that is. It would be, I guess, Article 10, Section 11. And I was wondering if the language was changed at the last meeting on the third line, that the commissioners would appoint from time to time a panel of citizens. And I wondered if that had been changed to registered voters.
No.
Do you know, Carol?
I am looking at Article 11, section, the last two is section 11.
Yes, I think it might be.
The Prudential Committee, the Board of Fire
Yep.
Commissioners, and the Board of Water Commissioners may from time to time appoint a panel of citizens of the district to act as an ad hoc. That's
So it does say citizens and not
Panel of
registered
citizens.
voters.
Panel of
So
citizens.
if you would be willing to, Mark, to put that on our next agenda, because I really think that that a panel that is acting as an ad hoc committee to study and advise on subjects of interest to the district should probably be registered voters.
I think you may well be right, and that's the perfect kind of thing that we should be looking at here. It's certainly more substantive than a typo,
Right.
but it may be.
Right,
So yes, so that kind of, we'll put that on the list. And
Right,
if you
I would
see
like
other
that.
things like that,
okay.
I do note that Fran is waving. I do want to give her a chance
But
to
I
speak.
would like to just say, I am not making a motion on anything that you were saying we need to vote on.
Okay.
I brought it up for discussion. There's no motions to vote on, so just putting that out there.
If
Are we
everyone
at
heard
public
that,
comment?
Carol points out that no one has moved on any of these points, which is a point very well taken. So there is nothing to vote on at this point. Very good. Fran, go ahead. Yeah, Fran, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Okay. We looked at Amy's concern at past bylaw meetings, and considering that we have such a large summer population that contributes a significant amount of money to the operations of the fire district, and it's an ad hoc subcommittee, which does not require being a registered voter. Even when the town of Barnstable does ad hoc committees for various reasons, they don't require everyone be a registered voter in the town. So I think that the reason we left it and the reason it was there in the first place was to ensure that people who lived in the village had an opportunity to express their ideas and concerns on a committee and not be outed because they don't vote in this district.
Okay, thanks. That's another perfectly valid observation as well. Let's talk about that at the next meeting. It may well stay exactly the way it is right now. Any other thoughts, comments, or can I get a motion to adjourn? Seconded. I'm now adjourning the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. I really, applause from Rick. It was a little long. I thought it was productive. Thank you, everyone.